What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Early Edge NFL Prop Show. It's Friday at 3 o'clock, so you know you're going to get our best bets, in this case for NFL Championship Weekend. Let's bring in a couple of the stars of the show. As I'm hosting today, Claudia is out, but good news, we still have Dave. We still have Proppy. Gentlemen, how we doing? Uncle Dave, I know what you were doing there. How you doing today, my friend?
I don't know if it's good news or bad news that I'm here. A 2-2 week is probably cause for celebration given the way that I've rolled the second half of this year / the entire year. I've decided to change things up a little bit with my picks for this week and for the Super Bowl week. Nothing but unders. That's it. It's a little gimmicky. I apologize for it. But if I'm going to put the mush on players that I take to get overs and then they get hurt, we might as well capitalize on it and get on some unders. So everything from me from here on out, under. And you'll see it today on the show.
Propstarz, that's got to be music to your ears.
Certainly. I think unders are often the sharp side. But, yeah, I just keep an open mind like all things. And I'm excited for these matchups, really. I think this is truly wide open. Both of these games are super fascinating to me. Wouldn't shock me if any of these teams are obviously facing off in the Super Bowl. I think Denver's super live at home. I think the market grossly overreacted to Bo Nix's injury and absence. I think Jared Stidham is very interesting. I think one of his props is very interesting. And I'm just excited to break these matchups down.
It's funny because we're going to talk a lot about Jared Stidham. I actually almost brought a Jared Stidham prop to the show. I mean, I even had it typed in. I was going to put it on SportsLine, and I ended up backing off of it, which for the record, it doesn't mean I'm not going to put that in. Maybe you guys will convince me, hey, actually, I like that idea. So we're going to talk about our official plays. We're going to talk about our leans as well. Let's take a look at how we did last week, though. Let's take a look, Ben, at the recap screen here. Dave, like he said, goes 2-2. Propstarz 1-1. I go 2-0. Claudia has her first bad day in a while. I mean, she's been pretty great, but last week 1-4 brings her to 25-25 overall. Gentlemen, I think we should just go ahead and get started. As I'm gazing at Propstarz record here, 44-29 Proppy. That's pretty great. Can I ask you though? When the playoffs started, or even when we got to like week 16, week 17, I want to remind everybody what you said. Like, we're not necessarily coming to the AFC and NFC championship shows. And Ben, we can take this recap down at this point. We're not necessarily coming to these championship shows with as many picks as we would have had in week 3 or week 7 or even week 10 or 11. Can you just talk about that real quick before we get into Rams, Seahawks, and New England and Denver?
Of course, yeah. This is a theme that I constantly discuss. Personally, my betting volume significantly dwindles as the season progresses. Once we reach the NFL playoffs, the odds makers have a lot of data points to pull from. The lines are very sharp at this stage of the season. Also because there's just simply much less of a surface area to cover. There's only a couple of games, in this case, 2 games. There's just a big magnifying glass on all of these lines. They're being looked at. They're being bet. So just not a lot of things are going to be overlooked. And if they are, they're typically corrected quickly. I think Jared Stidham's passing line is a great example of that. This opened at 190 yards. It's been bet up to around 200 yards right now. So in my opinion, that was an inefficiency that the market has since corrected. But moral of the story, at this stage of the season, these lines are very sharp. I personally have very little action in comparison to what I'll have, let's say week 3, week 4, where I'll sometimes have 10 plus bets. Right now I have just one bet, one official pick. So I just would caution bettors right now that this stage of the season, these lines are extremely sharp.
So here's the thing. I was just told that we have a special guest waiting to come on to the show, maybe drop in on the show. I have no idea. This is not like an act. I have no idea who this might be. Ben, who's dropping in on the show right now? Oh my goodness, it's EC. Eric Cohen, how you doing, man?
I'm back on my favorite show. I just want to say this. See you, first of all, on the golf show. Congratulations on hitting a share of the first round leader. You and I are right at kind of in the mix with our Siwoo Kim and Bridgman picks. So great job there. I love being on this show with you. But these two guys, I haven't been on with these guys since the Super Bowl last year. We have Propstarz, who I consider the best prop bettor on the planet. All he does is make money. He changes lines. He is the real deal. And it's always an honor to share the screen with him. And then one of the guys that I look up to more than anyone in this business who playing this surprise today, Uncle Dave. You know, you've talked about having a rough season. Let me just put it to you this way. I had never won my fantasy football league in 29 years. And this year I said, you know what? I'm going to make sure that I check Dave's fantasy football rankings every single week as not to make any mistakes. Now, I drafted McCaffrey, Nakua, and McBride 1, 2, 3. So that's a good start. But you helped me through the year. And I finally took this monkey off my back. So I'm really glad to be back on the show with you guys. It's an honor. And yes, I have some kicker props today, if that's okay.
That's great. I was just Dave, I'll let you respond in a second. I was just going to be like, AC, you're sticking around, right? You're not just dropping in. You're sticking around. What's the deal?
If you guys are okay with that, it's great to be back on the show, and I'd love to stick around and have a few picks for you guys.
You should be telling me I'm sticking around. I shouldn't. You know what I mean? Like, you do whatever you want. Dave, respond, please.
I don't know if I'm okay with EC sticking around. You know, there's only one bad picker allowed on the show. No, I'll take that mantle. Glad you followed the fantasy advice. Congrats on winning that league, EC. I don't know if we need to spend a lot of time talking about EC and what he means to the show. I was inspired by a good friend who I talked to on the phone last week and thought to myself, getting EC back on the Player Prop Show could give us all the mojo that we need. Not that Sia needs it. He's been on a roll, but it could give us the mojo we need to finish this season strong. I think it's perfect. I think we should start to get into the games.
Let's get into the games. Patriots -5 at the Broncos, 42-point total. This one Sunday at 3:00 Eastern Standard Time. Dave, you promised us unders. We have 3 picks on this game, or I should say 3 official picks, but we're going to go through, even if it's not an official play, we're going to go through some leans. You know, if, let's say we don't have a passing prop, we're going to talk about those, and we encourage everybody in the chat to ask us questions or give us plays that you like as well. But Dave, again, you promised us some unders. So how about we start with one Drake May?
And one other thing, Sia, if you're not watching us live, if you're watching us after the fact, put your comments down and we'll get around to checking them out. Don't put the comments about how much I suck. I already know how much I suck. But if you've got a prop that you've got a question about Friday night, Saturday, you're watching the show, maybe one of us will come online and we'll answer the comment down below the video. All right.
Great
Drake
call.
May, first under of the week. Under 227.5 passing yards at -115. This is from BetMGM. And for starters, this is a tough matchup. We know this. Denver, second in the NFL in yards per attempt allowed at 6.1 yards. 5th in yards after catch per reception allowed. 10th in EPA per dropback. And they've been this good, seeing the 6th most pass attempts in the league this year. They've been tested. They are awesome. And given the potential shortcomings of Denver's offense with Jarrett Stidham under center, as well as the run defense declining over their past 4 meaningful games, I think this is a spot where the New England Patriots run the football. And if I were taking overs, I think you know where I would go with that. But since I'm not taking overs and I'm only taking unders, I'm taking the under on Drake May, not having to do a lot of work. I didn't want to go with the attempts. I wanted to go with the efficiency because that Broncos defense has been so good. And that's why the first play, an under, a not popular one. Claudia is going to have my head on a platter for taking Drake May under 227.5 passing yards.
Propstarz, go ahead.
First off, shout out to my brother EC. Great to see you back in the fold. So happy about the return of EC. I know I speak for a lot of people in the chat as well. I think Drake May is really fascinating here, kind of mirroring Matthew Stafford in the sense those two being the betting favorites to win the MVP coming into the playoffs. But they really haven't looked like MVPs in the playoffs. Drake May had 3 turnovers last week against Houston. It's really New England's defense that was the MVP of that game. So I wasn't very impressed with Drake May last week and really throughout these playoffs. So I think this is another difficult matchup for him against a Denver secondary that really excels in covering the boundaries and the perimeter. So tough spot for Drake May for sure. And I certainly his great play from the regular season, I don't think has carried over into the playoffs, but obviously much different stakes here. Very difficult matchup, mile high. Denver's defense is exceptional. So really interesting here.
This actually plays really well. EC, I'm going to go to you for maybe some takes on this game as well. So I put this out Tuesday morning and on SportsLine. I brought it to the early edge. There was still one major book. It was FanDuel that was laying 11.5 rush attempts on Ramondre Stevenson. I went ahead and took that. I was early to the party. FanDuel changed it. They switched it to 12.5 a couple of hours later, if not sooner. But I'm still going to come to the show with Ramondre Stevenson. Again, it's 11.5 on SportsLine. It's juicy, though. It was minus 138. I'm going to still come to the show with Ramondre Stevenson over 12.5 rush attempts. Now, this was minus 102 over at FanDuel, but some of these other major books have this as much as plus 105. So that's the number we're going to go with. Ben, forgive me if I haven't updated that. No, you already did it. Ben's the best. Ramondre Stevenson over 12.5 rush attempts at plus 105. And listen, this is just one of those things where whether you want to look at game script or whether you want to look at how to attack Denver, I mean, listen, you don't run the ball successfully on Denver necessarily, but I do think we're going to see a lot of volume from Ramondre Stevenson, and that's because he's the running back one for this team. I think we weren't really sure if Trevion Henderson was going to take over this role, but I think now we're pretty confident that it is Ramondre Stevenson's backfield, and Trevion's certainly going to get some carries. His rush attempt prop is in that 8.5 range. But again, the game script, I think, dictates that both of these guys might hit their overs. And I don't know if Ramondre Stevenson's going to be super successful from an efficiency standpoint, but I do know that the Broncos trust him to get the carries more than Trevion Henderson, especially since he's been so efficient over the last few ball games. So give me Ramondre Stevenson over 12.5 rush attempts again at plus 105. Proppy, go ahead.
I think Ramondre has looked very good. Also, hasn't put the ball on the ground since I believe week 2, if I'm not mistaken. That's something that's plagued him throughout his career. He seems to really just have the trust of Mike Vrabel right now, and it makes sense. I think pass protection, there's a big difference between him and Trevion Henderson. Outcarried him 16-12 so far in the last week, and then the snaps 40-25. I think we see an even wider split here in the AFC Championship in Ramondre's favor here. I think he has the trust of the coach. Really like what I've seen from him, not just in the postseason, but towards the stretch, down the stretch in the regular season. Ramondre was outplaying Trevion as well. I still think Trevion's involved, but I think it's really of versus a 1A, 1B. I think he's the number one guy, and Trevion's going to spell him maybe one series to every 2 series for Ramondre. So very impressed with Ramondre. I think he continues to have a big role. I think the gap even widens further in the AFC Championship game.
Dave, I know you have another under to give out, but EC, I don't know if you have any props or leans or plays on this game.
I do. See, I have 1 for this game and 2 for the late game. I do have an under in there just because I know it would please Proppy and now Dave. So it's not for this game, though. I do have my field goal prop in this game. On DraftKings, you can find the over 135.5 combined field goal yards. It's the only book that you can get where you can find this. Over 130.5 at minus 115. So here's my rationale on this one. Since November, Denver has allowed 23 made field goals in 10 games, including 3 last week by Matt Prater. They've allowed multiple field goals in 7 of their last 10 since the beginning of November. So that's on one side. Then on the other side, Will Lutz has multiple field goals in 5 of his last 7, including a 4-for-4 performance last week against Buffalo. I expect that we're going to see the defenses kind of stop the offenses between the 20s, we'll just say. And I think that we're going to have at least 5 field goal attempts in this game. 3 may cash this at 130.5, but I think 4 will definitely do it. Nonetheless, over 130.5 field goal yards. If I could, I'd make it a multiple unit play, but we'll just stick with 1 unit in my return on the show. Had to throw in something.
All right. Go ahead, Proppy.
Leave it to EC for multiple unit plays on kicking field goal in the season. Love it. That's so on brand. Now that we're talking about the AFC Championship, though, I just wanted to talk about Jarrett Stidham once again. I don't think Jarrett Stidham is your average backup. First off, this preseason, he had the highest PFF grade of any quarterback. I think that played a meaningful sample in the preseason. I would also offer a 90 PFF rating, which is elite. Also, 4 career starts, and all 4 of those starts, he's had at least 219 passing yards. I think it was a big miscue by the odds makers when they initially put out his passing line at 190 yards here. I still think there's some meat on the bone at around 198 to 204 and a half passing yards here. I still have a significant edge there. I just look at the spot for Jarrett Stidham. I don't think it's a huge drop off from Bo Nix to Stidham. I also think Stidham is one of the better backups in the league. I would also offer that I think Sean Payton is the right type of coach to really utilize Stidham, who's been in the system for a while. I think against this New England defense, who has really been phenomenal. New England's defense last week pressured CJ Stroud 25 times. The week before that versus Justin Herbert, 25 pressures. That is elite stuff. Milton Williams and Rob Spillane, since rejoining this New England's defense, have made a massive impact. But I think Stidham is going to get rid of the ball very quickly. And I think he can take advantage of the New England defense a little bit. I think Stidham here is a very good look to go over 200 passing yards. Obviously, I wish I jumped on this when this initially opened at 190, but I'm bullish on Stidham. I'm bullish on Denver being home dogs here, but I like Stidham's props quite a bit, and there's a pretty strong likelihood I make his passing yards a play.
I've got a play here I want to talk about, but EC, you go first.
Proppy, are you picking him to win outright?
I think they're very live outright. I think the market overreacted to Bo Nix's loss. I think Stidham isn't a significant downgrade. And I think Denver's just in a good spot where people are banking on New England to win. They're at home. I like that they're being counted out almost unanimously. So I just think it's a good spot for Denver here. It wouldn't shock me whatsoever if they win. If I had to choose a side, it would certainly be taking the points with Denver.
Dave, I got a question for you here because Chad is saying Stidham over 18.5 completions. First of all, Chad, I don't know where you see that line because this was the play I was going to put in. It opened at 18.5, much like the passing yards prop opened like I think in the high 180s, if not what Proppy is saying 190. It's now 19.5 for Stidham. Uncle Dave, I was going to put that in anyway because I think, and the chat is talking about this, I think Sean Payton is going to use Jarrett Stidham literally just like he uses Bo Nix. Now, he has a few limitations relative to Bo Nix, but I don't really see a lot of difference here in terms of what the game plan is going to be. And again, you look at the design plays, the stuff that's probably going to be there like quickly after the snap. I think Jarrett Stidham could get there. So do you have any thoughts on Stidham with respect to his completions or his yards?
No, I'm kind of with Proppy on it all. And the one point that he made that I especially agree with is that Sean Payton kind of won't be denied here. And that Sean Payton is very good at coming up with ways to scheme up his offense. It's how he's stuck around in this league as a head coach for as long as he has. And additionally, I agree with the sentiment that he's not that much of a drop off from Bo Nix. I'd be hard pressed to say that I really believed in Stidham as one of the 10 best backup quarterbacks before the season started. I don't know if I would have said that, but one of the top 16, one of the top half guys, sure. And when you take his stats from his 4 starts, and it's a really small sample size, and you try and build a profile for him based on some stats like completion rate, yards per attempt, some efficiency metrics, and compare it to other quarterbacks from this season, the first name that really kind of meshes with him is Bo Nix. And I almost feel like the reason why the lines came out the way they did is because the odds makers were expecting everybody to have doom and gloom over Denver and take the unders because it's a backup quarterback. And what happened? The line steamed up. And that's because I think people have gotten wise to who Jarrett Stidham is, the fact that he's at least serviceable as a thrower. Mm-hmm. And the one other thing that I got, and I think you're going to like this, Sia. Here are his target rates to running backs, receivers, and tight ends in his 4 starts in 2022 and 2023. It was just 15% to tight ends, 58.5% to wide receivers, 26.3% of his targets went to running backs. Think about the targets that running backs get. They're short, they're screens, they're flares. They are easy completions. And so if Jarrett Stidham is going to throw the ball, I don't know if he's going to throw it as much as Bo Nix last week, but if he throws it a decent amount, let's call it 35 times, he should be able to complete 20 passes. So I like where your head's at with that over.
Add in the fact, Proppy, I know you have something here too, that it's possible this is very much a negative game script and potentially soft coverage in the fourth quarter where you can just get some kind of like cheat your way to 5 or 6 completions that you otherwise maybe, didn't anticipate getting. Proppy, go ahead.
I'm personally not banking on that, but what I am banking on is that Sean Payton specifically got Jared Stidham when he decided to take over this coaching job. He's very comfortable with Jared Stidham. There's a lot of familiarity. The Jared Stidham has played in this system for a while. I actually think that the total in this game is interesting. I think there's some sneaky shootout potential in the game. I think Denver's defense has been hemorrhaging a little bit. They have not been the same defense that they were in the regular season either here. So this game to me potentially could get really interesting. I also, since we're just on this game, one guy I did want to discuss is Kayshon Boutte. He has been New England's best receiver throughout the playoffs. 7 receptions, 144 yards in the 2 playoff games, including a beautiful 32-yard reception against very sticky coverage from Derek Stingley Jr. last week. So Kayshon Boutte is very interesting to me at 38.5 receiving yards. Yes, that's the strength and the teeth of the Denver defense. He's probably going to see a lot of last year's Defensive Player of the Year, Patrick Surtain, on the outside, but he proved capable throughout the playoffs. Drake May trusts him, and I've been very impressed with Kayshon Boutte.
Yeah, and I want to point out a couple things. First of all, I hate going against Proppy. I have the underline. That was the first read in this game, but hearing you say this on Stidham, I may soften my bet a little bit on the under, which I was going to hammer. Secondly, David, I want to ask you about this. You mentioned this Stidham targets to running backs. What is Denver doing with their running back rotation here? I mean, why is Jaleel McLaughlin even playing? This is RJ Harvey. You drafted RJ Harvey high. Play your guy here. That's why, Sia, you mentioned, that this RJ Harvey line is kind of weird. What do we make of this, Dave?
Well, it's a good segue, Dave, because this implicates one of your picks, where the line is, as we're talking, is kind of shifting a little bit.
Yeah, it's RJ Harvey's under on rushing yards, because I'm with you, EC. I thought last week Denver would lean on its run game against Buffalo. You look at the Bills' defense, they were terrible against the run. They did the exact opposite. They leaned on Bo Nix to the max. I asked an NFL assistant coach this week about it and said, why would a team do this? And he said, they just love going with their guy. Matchups be damned. When the coaches believe and love their quarterback, they're going to lean into their quarterback. And that makes me believe that RJ Harvey is not going to get a huge workload again. And if he does, it's in a tough matchup. It was telling last week that Denver didn't use RJ Harvey. They didn't use any of their running backs in that game last week. And you would think that they would lean on the running backs now because it's Jarrett Stidham under center. We just spent 5 minutes talking about Jarrett Stidham and how we think he's not that far off from Bo Nix. And if we think Jarrett Stidham is, I said he was a serviceable backup quarterback. Proppy said that he's not far off from Bo Nix. You heard it all. You can rewind it if you want to. But Sean Payton loves this guy. And Sean Payton did make it a point. Proppy said it, to get Jarrett Stidham in to be his backup quarterback. And now it's a tough matchup for RJ Harvey against this Patriots defense. This is the reason why I think the Patriots win the game. Their defense has gotten healthy and they have gotten better. And we saw it last week against Houston. You saw what they did to Houston's run game last week. In their past 3 games with Milton Williams back and then more recently Robert Spillane healthy, they've led up, this isn't a joke, 1.8 yards per carry to running backs. No touchdowns, no explosive plays, 0, nothing, zilch. Harvey himself hasn't been efficient, 3.4 yards per rush in 4 of his past 5 games. The reason why I think we're seeing that number go higher, because I would have taken it at 40.5. Now, if you can get it at 46.5, man, that's a party. You're getting 6 extra yards, maybe even more by the time you see this in your book. I believe it's because J.K. Dobbins isn't going to be activated off of IR. I don't know it for sure. We'll get the official word. Proppy, you might already know. But once we get that official word, you'll see it. And you'll know that Denver's going to go right back into this game with the running backs they had last week. And there's no reason to believe that Sean Payton is all of a sudden going to have the epiphany that he's going to use his run game against this defense when they didn't use it against Buffalo's defense the week before. I'm out on RJ Harvey. I'm taking the under on his rush.
Proppy, 2 things here. One is this really feeds nicely into what we were talking about with Jarrett Stidham, because I don't think you run on New England. Especially with Milton Williams back. It's just not something you do. And the other thing is, to EC's question, I understand RJ Harvey was drafted high, but did we ever think of him, and maybe I'm just rewriting history, did we ever think of him as a between the tackles guy that's going to get 16 carries or 7? That's not who he is, in my opinion. And I'll go, Dave, I want to ask you the same thing, because I know you were probably scouting him last year.
On that. Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Poppy.
Yeah, I would first say I agree. See, I think this New England defense right now is the best run defense in the NFL with a healthy Milton Williams, with Robert Spillane back. They have just been so impressive. We look at the splits on and off with Milton Williams in the lineup. I mean, this New England front has been dominant, especially stopping opposing running backs with a healthy Milton Williams. They really kind of cratered when he got injured mid-season, but we're seeing why he was looked at as one of the top offseason acquisitions. Then as far as RJ Harvey is concerned, I was bullish on him heading into the season as a rookie, but just was not able to put it together really. He showed some flashes, but never really as a between the tackles runner who was capable of churning out 3 to 4 yards, getting you those tough yards. I think Sean Payton was very reluctant, despite having every intention of wanting to hand the backfield over to him. Even once J.K. Dobbins went down, it just still never looked like he was fully comfortable leaning heavily on R.J. Harvey. And then what do we see last week? Give it an extra week to prepare. Jaleel McLaughlin is significantly out-snapping RJ Harvey, which came as a surprise to us considering the usage at the end of the regular season. But again, not very surprised because RJ Harvey has simply failed to impress at the NFL level.
At least so far. Let's go to, there's some questions. Let's stick with Jared Stidham for a second. I want to say hi to some people. This is why we gamble is a handle. And he says, I'm tuned in. Jason Harrod is in here. We got Jeff Stenberg in here as well. John, Chad, I mentioned. Drew Martin is in here. A lot of people in here. Thank you for hitting the like button and being a part of this chat. But Jared Stidham, does anybody want to weigh in on what Japan is saying? Jared Stidham over 13.5 rushing yards. This makes a lot of sense to me. And I haven't double checked if that line is the line everywhere, but if you're probably going to have more dropbacks because you can't run the ball. And again, I'm not saying it's going to be a negative game script, but I'm saying that is one of the outs where you might have Jared Stidham dropping back a lot. He's not exactly fleet of feet, but he does run around a little bit. Any thoughts, anybody, on the over 13.5 rushing yards?
I'm just looking, going back to 2022, Jared Stidham had 34 yards rushing and 50 yards rushing in his last 2 games. Outside of that, there's not a heck of a lot of data there. I think playing Drake May's rushing yards is a lot better bet than trying to flip a coin with whether Stidham's going to scramble or not.
I'm on the opposite end of that. I said fleet of feet, by the way. I meant fleet of foot. I don't know how much, I don't know how much we're going to see Drake May. It's probably triple the line. He's probably in the 31.5, 32.
Yeah, he's like right around 30 to 33. I can double check what I had it at earlier, Sia. But I
think we're looking at just absolute desperation, everything from Jared Stidham. And I do think that means him getting flushed out of the pocket a little bit and having a few I got to run the ball situations. But it doesn't look like we have anybody that's really got a strong opinion there. I think we can probably, anybody have anything else on this game before we move to Rams Seahawks?
Is there anybody in the chat that has anything on this game?
Well, that's what I'm looking at. Oh, there's one more that I didn't see. Proper Rocky says, Cortland Sutton, 4.5 receptions under is his question. Anyone?
This guy runs, I just want to say, this guy runs more, what do I call cardio games, where he's just literally just jogging around the field and they don't even look at him. You would have to think, now, Proppy, you may disagree with this, but as a backup quarterback, you normally will stare down your number one receiver more often, right?
Yeah, and I would also offer that Troy Franklin, Pat Bryant, both banged up as well. So this may be a spot that he gets a little additional usage, just considering the state of the Denver pass catchers not being at 100%. So in a game where we could see additional passing volume and at least you kind of mitigate that New England pass rush by getting rid of the ball quickly, I'd be more comfortable fading yards than I would volume here because there could be additional volume for Jared Stidham. I think that's pretty likely if we look at the potential range of outcomes for him.
I will say this. Again, this is why we kind of like the juice attached to it. The under 4.5 is like minus 160. There's not, the market doesn't think he's getting to 5 catches. So that's something to consider. And again, when you're looking at the designed stuff that Sean Payton's likely to scheme, I don't think it's to Cortland Sutton. I think it's the wide receiver screen variety to the Mims of the world or the Evan Ingrams or the running backs as well. So I think 5 is kind of a lot. let's move. If you have more questions about this game, you came to the show late, go ahead and ask them. We can backtrack, but let's move forward to Rams Seahawks. And EC, I know you've got 2 bets in this game. How about you kick us off and you start us with one of them?
Well, Jeff Stenberg in the chat says, who's on my no bet list in the NFL? If you watch the early wedge, we have the golf no bet list. Well, there is a no bet list in the NFL, and there's one player that is still playing that's on it, and his name is Sam Darnold. Well, actually, we no bet the over. So, we're going to bet the under. This is a guy who has an oblique injury, and I asked my trainer at the gym yesterday, I said, with an oblique injury, how long should a quarterback be out? If it was the regular season, this guy is not, Darnold's at what, 3 weeks, Uncle Dave, 4 weeks, something like that? Like, he's not playing in this game this week, you would think, right?
With what do you mean?
He has an oblique injury.
Right, it was just last week.
He hurt himself in practice last week, and he played through it. He didn't have to do very much against San Francisco, but it's a relatively new injury.
He also, I don't think, threw much yesterday in practice, Sia. And that's why I'm going his longest completion under 35.5 yards at -115. Now, his last 3 games, he hasn't topped 200 yards. And we know that last week he didn't have to, as Uncle Dave said, against San Francisco. But throwing deep might be an issue with his injury. So my biggest concern about this bet is a run after the catch by JSN or Rashid Shaheed. Expect Seattle. I think they're gonna lean on Ken Walker a lot, and they're not going to allow Darnold to do heavy lifting. But I also want to throw this in there. Let's say Seattle's in chase mode at the end of the game, and I think the Rams are going to win, so I think Seattle might be picking up. If Darnold can't throw deep, at what point do they think about putting in Drew Lock? I'm just saying it gives us multiple outs here. Listen, Drew Lock is a more competent NFL quarterback than Jarrett Stidham, in my opinion. I mean, he's played a lot more. Go ahead, Proppy. Go ahead.
I just want to touch on Darnold here. I would offer this regarding Darnold. What has Darnold's biggest flaw always plagued him throughout his career? It's handling pressure in the pocket. If we look at Darnold's worst performance this season, it was their last matchup against the Rams. 0 TDs, 4 interceptions, one of his worst career performances against LA. He was pressured on 14 of his 46 dropbacks. I have some big questions about the Seattle offense playing without Zachary Charbonnet, who is their short yardage back. They also love him in pass protection. And then the health of left tackle Charles Cross is going to be significant. I like this look, EC. I think the Rams defense is going to find success here against a Sam Darnold that may not be operating at 100% with a banged up left tackle, without the preferred short yardage running back on the field against a Rams defense whose strength is getting pressure with their 4 down linemen. So I think this is a spot where we could see Sam Darnold really crater.
This is why I love the Rams this week, +2.5, or if you want to take it on the money line, because we're so intoxicated with what we've seen from Seattle over the last 2 games against San Francisco. One of the worst, because of injuries, one of the worst defenses possible that you could you could go up against if you're Seattle, in terms of they get no pass rush whatsoever. This is a completely different story with the Rams. And that's why I don't know. I was thinking about taking Darnold's over completions because I thought, well, maybe he's just going to have to pass against this team because that's what you do against the Rams. And that completions prop is only 19.5. Was there anything else about this prop you wanted to say?
Yeah, I just don't think his ADOT, Proppy, you've always talked about ADOT. Like, this guy, how many times is Sam Darnold going to throw down the field past 20 yards with an oblique injury where he can't push into his throws?
I think you got to be careful playing doctor here, though. We really don't know how significant this oblique injury is. He's able to warm up and play last week. It's not like he saw any signs that there was an issue.
But he didn't throw the ball down the field, see? It was all short, and they didn't have to that point. I mean, they had the lead before he even touched the ball. It was 7-0, but he didn't have to do much. That's why, for me, I think it's 10 yards, 15 yards at most, ADOT.
I would offer this. Seattle is designed to play with a lead, to play from ahead. When they're front running, when things are going well, we saw what happened against the 49ers. Very impressive performance. When they have to play from behind, I just don't think you can rely on Sam Darnold to really come up big in these high leverage situations. In regards to the game itself, though, I would have a lot more confidence in the Rams if Matthew Stafford looked like Matthew Stafford of the regular season. Matthew Stafford has not played well in the playoffs either. Just a 48% completion rate last week against Chicago without throwing a single touchdown pass as well. Hasn't looked like the MVP, the front runner to win the MVP award like he did in the regular season. However, his last dominant performance where he looked great happened to be against this Seattle defense, which gives me some hope here as well. So that's just something very interesting dynamic to ponder as far as this matchup is concerned.
Yeah, we're going to get to more Matt Stafford in a second. But Uncle Dave, you and Propstarz have a similar but not identical take on one Kenneth Walker. So Dave, talk to us.
I like the under on Kenneth Walker's attempts. I found it at 20.5 carries, -128 at BetMGM. And I know Zach Charbonnet is out, and I know Kenneth Walker has looked good against the Rams twice this season, but this number just feels too high. Will he be the lead back? Yeah. Will he be the only back? I doubt it. In 2 years as head coach of this team in Seattle, Mike McDonald's offense has had a running back accumulate 20-plus carries 3 times. 3 times in 2 years, including this postseason. And so whether it's Cam Akers or George Kalani or Velus Jones or all 3 of those guys, someone's going to take some work away from Kenneth Walker. Plus, the game script for Walker to receive that much work totally depends on whether or not the Rams put points up, which is pretty clearly something they've done against the Seahawks twice already, especially in Week 16, that 38-37 game when Matthew Stafford was on fire. Yeah, that game, that's not one where I would expect Kenneth Walker to have 20-plus carries if the same thing happens again. And after Walker shredded the Rams twice this year, I would imagine soon-to-be 40-year-old head coach Sean McVay would make it a point to really focus on Walker. It'll limit his efficiency. It'll force the Seahawks to go in another direction on offense, which, by the way, the Rams probably want. The odds makers know that the public will be all over the overs for Walker because Zach Charbonnet is out. Thus, the line is inflated. I'll go the other way. I'll take the under on Kenneth Walker not getting 20 carries against the Rams on Sunday.
And I'll say this, I hit the Kenneth Walker rushing yards over last week. Obviously, completely different situation and completely different number. But Dave, you got extremely unlucky, like you have been with injuries with respect to Zach Charbonnet, because he was definitely sailing over that I think it was a rushing attempt play that you had with Zach Charbonnet.
I think it was 12.5 rush attempts. It was a high number, especially for Charbonnet. But I had gone into that game expecting Charbonnet to be the better back, and he had been the better back more or less for Seattle this year.
Fair enough. All right. Well, Propstarz, you have a corollary play to this.
Indeed, I do. I thought Dave hit the nail on the head regarding Kenneth Walker, regarding the odds makers inflating his line, regarding an overreaction to Zachary Charbonnet, and just looking at Kenneth Walker. He's just never been heavily featured throughout his career. He's struggled from an efficiency standpoint. I think this number, 114.5 rushing and receiving yards, is simply grossly inflated. I would make this line somewhere between 105 and 107 and still lean under on it. But yeah, I think there's an assumption that because Kenneth Walker had a lot of success versus the Rams in the regular season, that'll ultimately carry over to this third matchup. To me, that's even more unlikely, but doesn't really factor heavily for me. But yeah, Zachary Charbonnet, the reason they were able to coexist and have so much success is their skill sets really complemented each other. Zachary Charbonnet, a very tough downhill runner, capable of getting you tough yards. I utilized him in short area situations. They really trusted him in pass protection. Kenneth Walker, not the same. He's more of a boom bust type runner, likes to dance around a little bit, break off big chunks versus churn out a couple of yards here and there. But I think this is going to be a much more difficult setup for him as the primary back. And I don't think it's a given that he necessarily absorbs all of that usage from Charbonnet either. Ultimately, this is a line that's typically reserved for someone like Christian McCaffrey. Kenneth Walker is not that. And I think this Rams defense is above average. They've looked good in the postseason, stopping the run as well. Completely bottled up pretty much all the running games in both previous matchups here. So just a huge line for Kenneth Walker. This really jumped out at me the moment I saw this. I knew this was something that I would ultimately open a significant position on.
Right. And the pick again is Kenneth Walker under 114.5 rushing and receiving yards -115. And I know you gave that out, Proppy, earlier this week on the early edge, correct?
I did indeed. And I also want to say I think Dave's look is equally sharp here as well. Again, I just do not think Kenneth Walker is suited for the type of high volume role. And again, we're just assuming that it's going to be like a 10-point lead for Seattle for him to have this type of usage. So I think that's unlikely. And I think it's just unlikely he gets that much work. So I'd love to look as well.
Hey, Proppy, how low would you go on this number?
I would play it down to what it's at presently, which I believe is in the 112 to 110 range.
Yeah,
so now we know that you haven't been watching the show lately, EC, because we've actually saved it for the recap screen how far up or down we'd go with all of our lines.
Wouldn't be a show without a Dave shot at EC. So.
Listen, I deserve it. Let me put it this way. Dave has taught me many lessons. One is don't play minus 200 juice on kickers.
Never.
And Proppy, you taught me a lesson. I think I was banned from the show this fall after giving out Samaje Perine in the Super Bowl with a 2-unit play over 7.5 receiving yards. We'll never do that again. So you know what? These are things that I learned from you guys, and Sia, you teach me every week on wedge. So it's always good to learn from three of the best.
That'll live in infamy.
We've got some early wedge stuff remember the 5-unit play on Scotty Scheffler? Eric Cohen.
That's why, and I think Patrick said last week, that's why I was banned from the fall. And I gave out a 5-unit play and a guy at plus 250 to win, and he lost to a guy that had never won on the PGA Tour. Yeah, it was wrong. Regardless, I've learned from you guys. Won't make these mistakes again.
We've got a couple more picks in this game. One from you, EC, one from myself. And there's some chatter there's some chat questions and comments as well. I love Paul Tolliver. He says Terrence Ferguson anytime touchdown plus 600. Okay, I like that. I also like Terrence Ferguson first touchdown at plus 3,500. And for the record, that FFT DFS show that we do every week, me, Mike, and Meg, he's 2,700 in DFS, and I think he's a sneaky play that not a lot of people are going to play. We'll get back to him in a second. Did you have something on him, Proppy?
I just wanted to talk about the Rams offense really quick, see if we could, before we transition to the next pick. The Rams offense last week really puzzled me. They went out with a lot of 11 personnel versus the Bears. They decided to go to a pass-heavy game script, not utilizing a lot of the heavy personnel that they've been doing, the 12 personnel where they're using multiple tight ends. I think Sean McVay learned from his mistakes. The Rams offense was not effective versus Chicago. If we look at the Seahawks defense, I think they're going to have to utilize the heavy personnel in order to mitigate some of Seattle's pass rush. And also because to beat the Seattle team, they're very vulnerable to opposing tight ends. So I think we see a shift in game plan from Sean McVay from this Rams offense. I think we see Matthew Stafford more effective in this matchup against Seattle.
I totally agree. It actually segues nicely into my pick. I've got Matthew Stafford over 1.5 touchdown passes at minus 132. And if you want to be a prisoner of the moment, you'll say, oh, well, in the 5-degree weather against the Bears, he didn't get there against, and he didn't look very good. He might have a bit of a finger injury. In the regular season, to close out the regular season, he hit this 11 games in a row. And part of the reason is because Matt Stafford is really good. The other part is that when they get near the goal line, especially when Devontae Adams is healthy, which he wasn't the last time the Rams played Seattle, they love to pass. They're a pass-first offense inside the 5 for the most part. So I really like Matt Stafford over 1.5 touchdown passes because if you look at the regular season, typically his line, if memory serves, and I never bet it over 2.5, but it's typically 2.5 because of how efficient he is when he gets near the goal line. So he's got his offense healthy. Let's not forget he's got his offensive line. We got Dotson back a couple of weeks ago. He's got Devontae Adams back. We think he's pretty healthy. And again, as much as you might have seen him struggle a little bit against the Bears in Carolina, even though the Seattle defense is better, I kind of like him going into Seattle because it's such a familiar matchup to Stafford and Sean McVay. So I don't really see this as a more daunting task just because it's a better defense than, let's say, Chicago. It's going to be better weather. And it's a much more familiar matchup to the Los Angeles Rams. So give me Matt Stafford to throw at least 2 touchdown passes at minus 132. EC, I saw you nodding your head here. You like this one?
Yeah, I love that pick, Sia. I think it's a great pick. It kind of, in a way, it correlates with my next pick. Proparachi in the chat mentioned Tyler Higbee, and that's where I'm going to go with this one. I'm going Tyler Higbee over 14.5 yards receiving at minus 116. So Higbee, since he came back from his injury, has 91, 45, and 27 receiving yards. And that 27 came on 1 catch in the Chicago game. In the Week 16 matchup between these two teams, Higbee was not playing, but LA tight ends caught 7 passes for 88 yards and a touchdown and had 13 targets. Now, Last week, if you remember, San Francisco's Jake Tonjes had 5 catches for 59 yards basically in the first half before he got hurt early in the third quarter. So I think Seattle's going to sell out to stop Puka Nacua and not allow him to go for 200+ yards and 2 touchdowns again. Look for the Rams tight ends of Parkinson, Higbee, and Ferguson. I'll be looking into those matchups, but this Higbee number stood out. I mean, 15 yards on 1 catch. I feel really good about it, so I'm rolling with it.
Proppy, go ahead.
I think it was inexplicable last week that the Rams had a game plan with 3 wide receiver heavy usage, Jordan Whittington and Kanata Mumpfield, 25 routes and 24 routes. Both ran more routes than all 3 of the Rams tight ends, including Tyler Higbee, who ran just 8 routes. I do not expect that to be the case this week. So I think the proof was in the pudding last week. I think we see more utilization of the heavy personnel involving more tight ends. That's what worked against Seattle in the regular season. That's what worked all season long for the Rams, and why they were such a very potent offense. Why Stafford had so much red zone efficiency. So I think they get back to that, and I think this is a good spot for them to do that as well.
Not 1, not 2, 3 different Rams tight ends had a snap share north of 64% in week 16 against Seattle. Whereas in week 11, I'm looking at it right now, so I apologize for not being as on top of it as I usually am. Only 1 guy did. So they learned from that first game to lean on their tight ends more. My philosophy on why they didn't use more tight ends last week, Propadoodle-doo, is because they weren't afraid of the Bears' pass rush. And now they're taking on one of the best pass rushes in the National Football League. You better have some extra blockers in there. And that's why the tight ends could play more. I'm sorry if you're trying to get overs on Jordan Whittington and Kanata Mumpfield. I don't think they're a good idea. But I think the overs on the tight ends, especially low ones, I think they're worth a couple of sprinkles.
Same.
Okay, there's a question from Pogo Picks that I want EC to answer on a field goal prop, but that's in the other game. Let's talk about Blake Corum real quick. Paul Tolliver says Blake Corum over a half a reception. I think that's like way too speculative, but Proppy, I'll ask you, and then if anybody else wants to weigh in. Blake Corum, with respect to his rushing attempts, it does feel like he's gotten like just a little bit more phased out than we would have thought. I think his rush attempt prop is in the 8-ish range, 8 to 9. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't have a strong take on. I think it's again, it's a little bit fluid of a situation. I think McVay is willing to look at whoever he feels like is doing a better job. How you define that, I don't think necessarily is indicative of whose yards per carry are more. I think it has to do with things that we don't necessarily see or able to evaluate with a naked eye. But yeah, I think it's a little bit of a fluid situation. It's a difficult defense, the Rams defense. And to me, this looks like a spot where you could lean more heavily elsewhere. So I'm just not seeing with Blake Corum right now.
Yeah, I think the cold got to McVay's head last week. He lit my Blake Corum money on fire. It was dead in the first half. It was awful. I had over rushing attempts, over rushing yards, and he had 6 carries, and a few of them were in overtime. I mean, it was really pathetic. It was a disgraceful game plan by Sean McVay, especially for those of us who had money on Corum. So I think that Corum will get more run this week, but who knows what that means?
I love how it's sure if he will. I'm not even sure if he will. First of all, 2 games against Seattle this year, 0 catches, 0 targets. He also had 0 games with more than 32% of the snaps played. I think push comes to shove, they're in crucial situations. It's going to be Kyron Williams on the field and not Blake Corum. I don't like this over either. I wouldn't put hard-earned money on the under for Blake Corum receptions, but as sprinkles go, it's worth one.
Yeah, I think part of that last week, the Rams couldn't really sustain drives like they normally do. And so you just ended up getting Kyron, and then they were punting. Really, I think it's going to be, I don't think it's not like I think Seattle's going to be super unsuccessful on offense, but I think the Rams will be able to sustain drives in a typical Rams fashion relative to what we've seen the last week or so. But let's talk about Davante Adams. Uncle Dave, do you have any thoughts on his receiving line? Because it's 49.5, which I want to say sounds a little high, but I'm out on trying to figure out what's going on with Davante Adams. How about you?
When I watch him, I see some good speed, straight line speed off the snap, but everything else he does, he's covered. And we know that these Seattle corners are very good. The only Devontae prop that I'd be encouraged by would be anything involving touchdowns. If you want to take him for an anytime touchdown, that makes a lot of sense. And I still think he can catch in a contested catch situation in an end zone. Most of his touchdowns against man coverage this year have come from inside the 3-yard line. So that's something that could happen. But I don't see him getting a bunch of, he might get some deep targets. He'll be covered on them. I'd kind of like the under on Devontae Adams' yardage in this game.
AC, I want to go to you on like Fugue is the name here. I know what prop he's going to say on this, so AC, I'm just going to go to you. What is it?
Yeah,
Fuge.
Is it Fuge? Okay, I wasn't. Okay, fair enough.
Fuge. We'll go with Fuge on this one.
But hold on. It was a different question. Not that one. His other question.
All right, so Fuge asked about Devontae Adams, but Fugue asked something else. Are they related? Sia, what's going on?
Yeah, there's different people, obviously. I'm just going to go
like
with
a tag
Fu.
team from the 80s in the WWF.
Foo Fighters says Kenneth Walker over 21.5 receiving yards -110. Now you're the one that's saying, hey, we'll see a lot of check downs, a lot of short area passing. Do you believe in the running backs getting some receiving yards in this one?
Maybe with Walker, he got a little more run, with receptions than we've seen last week, especially than we've seen in weeks before that. I'm going with this Harvey prop. I'm buying RJ Harvey. Maybe I'm crazy here, but I think that this is the stat that you gave Sia earlier about Stidham throwing to the running backs, or Uncle Dave, you gave that to about that. I'll tell you what, I'm going RJ Harvey here. I think he has at least 25. I'm buying up that line. I'm throwing it in my SGPs. This is dump down central to RJ Harvey, and I'm staying away from Ken Walker's receiving yards.
I did not do the legwork on how the Patriots are against running backs. Usually the Patriots play a lot of man-to-man coverage, and that could open up some chances for Harvey to get some targets. But I'll give the percentage again, 26.3% of the throws that Jarrett Stidham made in 4 starts. This sounds so stupid to say because it was from 2022 and 2023, but it's the last time that he played actual NFL football. Yeah, he checked down a lot. He went to his running backs, and as bad of a runner Harvey has been in terms of efficiency, he's been okay as a receiver. Might I say this is a multi-sprinkle bet, taking the over on RJ Harvey's receiving yards, even though Proppy probably hates that we're saying such a thing about a running back doing something in the past.
It's not Samaje Perine, so I think we might be okay.
If you're listening to the podcast and you're not watching us, just know that Propstarz was nodding his head yes. Like he does not want to get involved in these running back receiving yards. Let's get involved with our best bets because we do have to close shop in a couple of minutes here. I don't know if Ben was able to put EC's bets up. Of course he was, because Ben is the best producer in the world. So I'm sad that I doubted him. Eric Cohen, you're 0-0. So you could be undefeated on the season if you hit these bets, which is pretty cool.
Wow.
Let's each of us will read off our bets. I'll start. I've got Ramondre Stevenson over 12.5 rush attempts at +105. Just know that if you're a SportsLine member, you did get this. It was -138, but it was over 11.5 rush attempts on Tuesday morning. I've also got Matthew Stafford over 1.5 touchdown passes at -132. Uncle Dave.
So let's start with Drake May under 227.5 passing yards. That's at -115. I would play that down to 220.5. So you should be able to find an under at a number that you like for Drake May. I don't think Drake May is going to have to throw a lot, but I'd rather bet on the inefficiency against a really good Denver Broncos pass defense. RJ Harvey under 46.5 rushing yards at -118. That is a hell of a lot better than what I put it on the site at, which was 40.5 rushing yards at -133. Obviously, I would rather have the under at 46.5 than 40.5. I'm a freaking moron for putting it in at 40.5. And then Kenneth Walker III under 20.5 carries at -128. Yeah, that's a little juicy-loosey. If you want to take it at 19.5 at -110, -115, I'm good with that too.
All right, Propstarz.
Yeah, I've just got Kenneth Walker under 114.5 combined rushing and receiving yards. I play this one down to 109.5 comfortably. I also love Dave's look on his 20.5 carries as well. I also very much like Jarrett Stidham's passing yards. If you find this south of or under 200 yards, I think it's a good look. I intended to hop on this, and I missed the mark here by allowing the market to correct a little faster than I anticipated, which is why it's not an official play of mine. I still think there's a little meat on the bone for Jarrett Stidham here. There's a decent chance that I do make that an official pick and position of mine.
All right. And you got to listen to the whole show because Proppy talked about a lot of plays that he was leaning towards. All right, EC, what are your 3 picks today?
All right, my 3 picks are the total field goal yards in New England, Denver over 130 and a half at minus 115. I'd play this up to 160 yards, but it won't get there because this one, you'll get 4 40-yard field goals. This one's going to hit for us. Sam Darnold's longest completion under 35 and a half yards at minus 115. I don't believe that he can throw the ball down the field with his oblique injury. And Tyler Higbee over 14 and a half yards receiving at minus 116.
All right. Before we close shop, we're going to close shop in just a minute, but let's do the old school thing where we talk about our favorite play from somebody else, from not one of our bets. And EC, you kick us off. What's a favorite play that doesn't belong to you?
Boy, I'll tell you, there's 2 of them that I'm actually all 3 of them. I have one from each of you. I like the Kenneth Walker unders from both Dave and Proppy. I think his numbers are inflated this week, and I really like that Ramondre Stevenson rushing attempts prop from UC. I think that New England gets the lead and sits on the ball and gives their veteran running back the carries.
Propstarz.
I love the Ramondre look. Obviously, like the Kenneth Walker look from Dave here. I like the Tyler Higbee look from EC. I love all Dave's 3 unders there. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of good picks here. I like that there's not, too much action, and I like that we're under-centric on this show.
Dave Richard.
When's the last time we had under 10 picks on this show for a week's worth of games? I get it. There's only 2 games, but I think just to Proppy's point about how we are cutting back a lot, not trying to force things. And I always think that that's great advice for all the bettors out there. You don't have to sink your money into this week. There will always be another week down the line that you can go ahead and bet on. So only bet on stuff that you really, really love. It's about quality, not quantity. That said, if I were taking overs, I would be all over the Ramondre Stevenson one. And I like where EC came from with Sam Darnold's longest completion under 35 and a half yards. I think that's a sharp look too.
All right. And for the record, if we put more picks up on the board, or if you wanted to get my 11 and a half rush attempt prop, on Tuesday, if you missed the early edge, go to sportsline.com/join. Again, that's how you join Sportsline, sportsline.com/join. We got all the other seasons to contend with college basketball and the NBA and so much more. So make sure you are a member of Sportsline, not just to get the picks, but everything that Sportsline has to offer. All right. Gentlemen, I think that's going to do it. Programming note, I don't think we're here next Friday, but we will be here the following Friday for Super Bowl props. So next Friday, we won't be here at 3 o'clock, but the following Friday, we absolutely will be. EC, there's no reason for me to close the show. So, my friend, you've got the floor.
All right. Dave and I get to do this once again. I'm so excited. All right. For C and Nejad, Uncle Dave, and Proppy, I am EC. And as I always like to say, let's hit it big. Good luck.